You're listening to In Kap We Trust for the Always Next Year Podcast Studio Network. You can find the team on our Twitter at ANY Podcast or on our website, www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. And now, to bring us in, the Jackdaws.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back, hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, danced a jig over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still happy life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
No. We are back with an officially eliminated version of In Kap We Trust here at the Always Next Year podcast, where the Philadelphia Phillies matter to no one, including your hosts. I am your host, Shane, and I am joined as always by Rob. Rob, sir, how are you?
Hey, now it's only officially eliminated from the NL East contention. There still is a sliver.
We're 4 games out.
There's still a sliver. It ain't over until the fat lady sings. But with that being said, I'm with you. I don't believe it's going to happen.
0.7% chance. That is officially eliminated.
So you're
in my
saying
book.
there's a chance?
No, I'm not saying there's a chance. Officially eliminated in the AMYP podcast group. I don't give a damn anymore.
I was actually watching the Flyers preseason game over the Phillies last night.
So was I. Which, by the way, Flyers Twitter is already a dark hole of a mess over a preseason game. Yeah. Hilarious.
You can blow a 2-0 lead against a division rival, man. Come on, you can't do that.
It's 3 games in a row, man.
Yeah.
All doing that. Rookie game and then the first 2 preseason games. I still don't give a damn. It's preseason. But yeah, so we're here. We're talking Philadelphia baseball, Philadelphia Phillies baseball. You know, obviously, yes, officially eliminated from the division, and we are in our book with the 0.7% chance. Do you really think they're going to win like 13 of 14 and have the rest of the world collapse around them? They're officially eliminated.
No, I was just saying that to be a snarky asshole and point out that there is technically still a chance.
0.7%. Just going to keep saying it, 0.7%. It might even have gone down, though they did win last night.
Because Milwaukee's been beating everybody ever since Yelich got hurt, so they're probably going to get that second wild card spot.
Yeah, well, again, you have the Cubs and Milwaukee both without their best players, both hurt, both playing very inspired baseball. Something the Phillies don't do, ever.
No.
Inspired baseball is something they are clearly allergic to.
The team died when Andrew McCutchen died.
So, that's probably true. In a season full of a million different things that had went wrong, that was obviously one of the things that was one of the biggest gut punches. But again, with officially 4 games out, with I think 13 games left to play, I jokingly, in my guest appearance on Kelly Greenhour with AMYP, had mentioned that I think that the Phillies are somehow going to put themselves in a position that the Miami Marlins series is going to matter. Like, I think it wouldn't shock me if they sweep the Braves and then sweep Cleveland and then take all 5 games in Washington. Like, they haven't won more than 4 or 5 games in a row all year, and now they're going to win 13 in a row or whatever the hell it might end up being, 9.
I don't think they've won 5 games total in Washington like the past 3 years.
Maybe not. I have no idea. But then we're going to get to Miami and everyone's going to be all back invested again, and we're going to be only a half game out or something, and we're going to get fucking swept by the Marlins. Like, this is just how this Phillies season goes. So I'm going to say it again. Officially eliminated here, at least from AMYP's thought. Before we get further into this segment here of gloom here, talking Philadelphia Phillies baseball, we would like to remind you to go ahead and rate and review our podcast here, the In Kap We Trust pod. You can rate and review Backyard Beers and Football, Whiskey Ramble, Kelly Greenhour, The People's Take. Trying to remember all the segments we have. AMYP Chiefs Talk, Disciples of Ed. What am I missing here?
So many different segments, episodes now.
We do. It's absurd. Producing all of them blows, but we do it because we love you guys and you listen. So
yeah, so give us a review.
Yeah,
we'll find you.
For as many people that listen to these shows, like, the very small amount of reviews we have in is really fucking discouraging. So, for the love of God, submit a review. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know some stuff that you would like in the shows. Backyard Beers and Football is built almost entirely for the people, by the people. So that is on nothing but what you guys email into us, which you can always do. It's amypodcastteam@gmail.com. You can find that link on our website. It's www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. These are definite ways to get in contact with us and to get your points heard and get your questions answered and things of the sort. But we're gonna talk a little bit now about some of the things that have kind of gone on over the last week, and then just some random Philadelphia Phillies stuff that interests us at this point, since it's tough to talk about the baseball team as is right now. So, like we mentioned, 4 games out of the second wild card spot that will not be obtained by the Philadelphia Phillies. We're going to keep saying that. Ejections. So this has been something that's been fun for me this year, and a game that has so much of like the emotional bit of sports has gone away in terms of, with football, the big hits are eliminated now, right? Like that used to juice a crowd. Like that would pump up your sidelines. You'd go crazy. In hockey, we had fights happening every single night that, hey, you're down 2-3-0 and someone takes a shot that they really didn't need to take in terms of a hit, and your enforcer goes out there and he handles some things. That's not really there anymore. In baseball, it's ejections. With the challenge rule there, you're kind of eliminating a lot of the need to do that, and then now it's just arguing balls and strikes. And for a game that is built on imperfection, we now have a box up there that shows us every single time that a umpire does miss those calls. And when that's the only thing you can legitimately argue anymore without a review, these guys go crazy. And Gabe Kapler is a guy who has always kept his emotions really in check and been very poised through last year and through the early parts of this year. And then now, I guess this is 4th or 5th ejection this year. Harper like as that, well. Yeah. What is your stance, 1, on ejections in the game of baseball, and 2, how does it make you feel towards Gabe and towards Bryce in that particular scenario where obviously we need him on the field?
Well, I'll answer the second part of that question first. I actually gained a lot of respect for Gabe. I'm still not a Gabe guy, but I gained a lot of respect for him. The fact that he goes out there, he stands up for his players. He goes out, he voices his opinion to the umpires without really, censoring himself. Obviously, he's not censoring himself. He gets himself ejected. He actually gets pretty heated out there, which is good to see. And Bryce, you want to have your star player out there, especially when the games matter late in September. But I don't blame him for getting pissed off, especially if an umpire is continually calling strikes that should be balls or having a bad strike zone. That's frustrating for a hitter because they go up to the plate, they think that they know what to expect when it comes to the strike zone, and then an umpire completely throws them off by having a bigger zone than they're used to. So I don't blame Bryce for going out there and getting pissed off about it and voicing his opinion a little bit. I like to see the fire from the players. Even if it gets them ejected from a big game, I like seeing fire from the star players, the players that are supposed to matter here in Philadelphia. And as far as the ejections go, I mean, the umpires are human. I'm not a big umpire guy. I'm always criticizing them. I'm always going on Twitter saying, hey, this guy's got way too big of a strike zone tonight. This guy's got way too small of a strike zone tonight. This guy's missing that call and that call. But calling balls and strikes, we as fans have the benefit of seeing the box, like you alluded to. The umpires, they're just going on feel pretty much because they don't have that. It's not as easy as it seems to us fans to differentiate some of these pitches that are on the black. So I can understand the umpires being a little bit standoffish when the players are out there complaining about it and he's hearing it from both dugouts. They're going to lose their cool too. So the first course of action is to eject the guys who are really giving them the most shit about it. So I'm not 100% opposed to ejections.
I do, in any sport, baseball in particular, I feel for refs because, look, as times continue to evolve, as technology continues to evolve, these guys have to be perfect because every single mistake they make, that's the only thing they're known for. It's kicking the shit out of these calls. It's having a poor strike zone all night and, hearing it from everyone, going on social media when you get home and you're getting ripped for everything. These guys, they have such an unforgiving job out there. And, you have to assume that 20 years ago the guys were exactly the same, but you were looking through static on TV, and you weren't getting replay after replay after replay with a perfectly painted box out there designed specifically for the height dimensions of the player that's in the box. Like, this is shit that didn't go on 20 years ago, and it's going on now. So it's brutal for them, but in that same respect, as time continues to evolve and we know these things are here, at a certain point, if you're going to adjust to try to make the game as perfect as you possibly can in terms of challenges and things of the sort, like, maybe the strike zone is something that you got to entertain that too as well. Now, I don't like challenges at all. I like the human aspect of the game. I like being mad at an umpire. As a player, I used to, and still do, love when I can totally tell that an umpire is just garbage that day, and you can use that as fuel. This is what it is, because chances are they're not just garbage for your team. They're probably garbage for both. It just is what it is. It's a natural human element to this game as players, and umpires should have that exact same feel. It's unfortunate, and I go back to the thing all the time in the 2008 World Series where Jimmy Rollins got tugged in the ass at third base and was called safe. Who's to know what happens the remainder of that series? Like, there's shit that happens. The Saints game, obviously, last year. There's stuff that happens that it's disappointing, but it happens.
Yeah, as biased fans, we don't realize when these blown calls benefit us as much as we realize when they go against us.
Yeah. And again, from an energy standpoint, and kind of, like I said, juicing up your clubhouse, your locker room, wherever you are, whatever it is that you're playing. If a star player goes out because they're arguing something that they clearly believe in and they're frustrated at the way that the game is going, yes, there's always going to be the people that sit there and say, you're the best player on the field. You need to be on the field. Well, to bring it back to what you were just stating about both the Cubs and the Brewers, their best players are not on the field and will not be on the field for the remainder of September and possibly October for one, but definitely October for the other one. The rest of that team is playing incredibly inspired baseball. If Bryce Harper gets ejected from a game, it's obviously not ideal, but holy shit, if you're a player that is still in that baseball game, you are just juiced the hell up trying to get a win for your guy who was fighting for not just himself, but for the team to get a point across to try to, again, just instill some energy there. You got to play inspired after things like that, and this team doesn't.
Yeah, and on paper, they have enough talent that if they do play inspired baseball, they're going to win. They just haven't been able to put it together. They have guys like Rhys Hoskins, they have JT out there, they have Scott Kingery, they have a whole bunch of really talented players in their lineup. And yeah, it's just a matter of when one guy goes down or when Bryce isn't playing well, the rest of the team isn't inspired. That's been the issue that's plagued them all season long. Because even after the injuries, even after McCutchen went down, even after Robertson went down, even after Tommy Hunter and Neshek and all those guys, Sir Anthony went down, the team still had enough talent, maybe not to win a division or contend for a World Series, but to at least contend for a wild card and not be, what is it, 4.5 games out right now?
4 games out, so officially eliminated by my standards.
Yeah. They still had enough talent to be better than where they are right now, and they haven't put it together. So, yeah, when Bryce gets ejected, it shouldn't be a huge issue for the team. It is because they make it one, because the rest of the guys don't step up. Rhys doesn't step up. JT doesn't step up. That's a team problem. That's not a Bryce problem right there.
On team problems there, a lot of people will sit there and say, well, that's on the manager. For a large portion of last year and for a majority of this year, the punching bag of this fan base when things don't go perfectly has been Gabe Kapler. I've long been on his side for things. And when I hear you sitting here and saying things like that, that's a team problem. That's a whatever problem. That is an indictment on the manager, because at a certain point, your manager needs to be able to help bring inspiration to your team in those types of moments, or in all types of moments. And that has been something that's constantly been questioned about Gabe, and this team not getting up to go and play for him and play for that front office and to even play for Bryce is the way that we see the Cubs are currently playing without Javi, and the way that Milwaukee has played since the fractured kneecap, which still makes me want to fucking vomit, of Christian Yelich. So with that, we've also seen, at least in recent weeks, that blame of Gabe going, maybe it really isn't Gabe. Maybe it just is Klentak. Maybe it is McPhail. We've seen this begin to shift a little bit further away from Gabe. You know, it was trending almost every day from June, middle of June on. Fire Gabe, fire Kapler, fire Gabe Kapler. Trending everywhere. And it started to shift. I don't really see that anymore. Now I see fire Klentak, fire McPhail. If we don't, we don't. Shit like that. Where do you shift your blame now?
Well, yeah, it's clear why everybody's gone to the fire Klentak thing, because as the season has gone on, there are more gaping holes, especially in the starting rotation and the bullpen, that Klentak, you know, I don't want to say he completely ignored them, especially he went out and tried to get some bullpen guys, didn't really make much of an effort for the starting pitchers, but yeah, he's allowed for there to be holes in key positions where the Phillies need to have more talent there. He hasn't addressed that yet. So yes, I can see why fire Klentak has become a thing. Fire McPhail has become a thing. Personally, Gabe is not exempt for me. He's not the main culprit here. He's not the main reason why the team's not doing well. But at the same time, I feel like I'm not saying that he's a bad game decision guy, like a game manager, but He just needs... The Phillies need a guy with more fire. The Phillies need more of an alpha male type of manager, not a guy who's super relaxed and just kind of lets the guys do whatever. They need a guy who's in their face, who's always getting them fired up. You know, a Joe Berardi type, if you will. So, yeah, I'm not a Gabe guy. He's not the main culprit, but I'm also not completely taking the blame away from him either.
So are you just torch them all and start fresh with a new front office, new scout department, new coaching regime?
Well, the first order of business is a new front office, because I do think that Gabe's going to be back next year. And despite my criticisms of him, I would kind of like to see what he could do if the front office actually addresses the pitching staff.
Yeah.
If that doesn't work out, if it's still the same old shit next year, then I think Gabe's got to go.
Yeah, I would say. So a lot of people sit there and say, oh, you know, well, Boone over there with the Yankees, you know, has been manager of the year, you know, and through all the injuries that they've suffered. They have a 99-win team right now over there, and we're on September 16th or something. You know, it's
fucking savages, man.
So my whole thing is he doesn't have to do anything in New York. Not only the fact that they are talented and deep, they're an American League team. What we saw out of Gabe for a year and a half was exceptional. He didn't have a pitching staff. He didn't have offensive talent last year. He had a bunch of guys that he had to kind of make shift into working, and they had a horrendous run differential, and somehow we're still a first-place team for, I think, like 5.5, 6 months of these two seasons combined, maybe even more. Like, it was absurd. They have no business, and had no business, being in first place with the entire roster last year and then the pitching staff this year. But Gabe had him there. And one of the things early on this season that was really encouraging to me was the fact that the team was going well enough. He didn't need to be the most decisive in-game manager. He just needed to not make a decision poorly enough that would cost them a game. Like, he just needed to kind of, if there were 9 or 10 selections to choose from and only one was wrong, he just needed to not choose the one. And then any other 9 decision he could make was fine.
And by and large, he was good about that in the early part of the season.
He was. So with a revamped pitching rotation, I'm a little more confident in him. One of the biggest things that we sit here and see is he doesn't manage the double switches well, he doesn't manage his bullpen well, and his starting lineups are bizarre at times. Well, we're incredibly injured. Obviously, you lose former MVP in Andrew McCutchen. Odubel's an idiot. You know, early on in the year, we had, 6 guys go down with hamstring injuries and lower body soft tissue issues. Corey Dickerson hurt all the time. Like, this has not been Michael Franco. The organization bet on an idiot to be anything other than a not great third baseman and a not good professional hitter.
But still L's favorite player, though.
Well, L's absurd. But all these things, like night in and night out, he is faced with decisions where he may only have one viable option, where other teams may have 9. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So next year, if you give him 3 decent starters, and he's not saying, all right, Aaron Nola's going to go 6 or 7 this week, great. But then beyond that, I'm lucky if I get 4 innings out of any other of my starters, and now I'm going to have to mix and match. Oh, by the way, no one's healthy in the bullpen. That's a lot. That's a big ask. So I, too, am willing to give him next year, not for the fact that I'm definitely still a Gabe guy, is he's just been handed dog shit luck in a city that is really hard to fail in. So for me, he's got to be safe. And if Klentak is still here, he is going to have to make insane acquisitions in this offseason to get in anyone's good graces. Like, he's going to have to go out and sign 4 starting pitchers, all of like all-star caliber, for any of us to be like, maybe he can stay.
He's going to need to get Garrett Cole first off.
Yep.
And yeah, honestly, if he's still here next season and he doesn't get Garrett Cole, they might just burn the whole stadium to the ground there.
It's true. Minor market GMs in 2019. Moron.
Well, first off, minor market GMs do not work in big markets. Philadelphia is a big market where you need to go out and you need to spend money to remain relevant, because you're competing with 3 other big name teams. The Sixers are a great team competing for a championship. They spend money. The Eagles are a great team competing for a championship. They spend money. The Flyers, maybe not a great team yet, but certainly on the rise, and just hired a brand new coaching staff, and they went out and spent a lot of money, especially on Kevin Hayes. So they're doing what they can to remain relevant in Philadelphia. If you're the Phillies, you need to keep pace with that.
Yeah, you do.
It's a tough. Philadelphia is a really tough market to stay relevant, especially when the other 3 teams are out there making moves the way that they are. And the Phillies, they did what they needed to do last year. They went out and got Bryce. They went out and got JT.
I was just going to say, they addressed some major needs, and they addressed the big one, and that was Middleton and his wife. That wasn't Klentak at all. Klentak probably would have not signed the guy because he offended him or something. But, like, there were other obvious holes and obvious issues with this roster that they willingly and knowingly went into the season with, and that's a problem. You know, when you have the means to go out there and not put yourself in that situation, you need to fucking not. That's the difference between you and an Oakland A's who got to be creative. Like, if you're in a bad situation, open up the checkbook and fix it.
This isn't freaking Oakland, man. I mean, we're not like $5 away from moving the team to another city. This is Philadelphia. The Phillies are here to stay. And yeah, last season they went out and they did what they needed to do. They got Bryce. They got the marketable player that they badly needed. But yeah, you got to continue opening up the checkbook. You need to go all in for Garrett Cole. If you can't get him, then get Rendon, because God knows the third base position is an absolute mess right now. Mm-hmm. That's another thing. In defense of Kapler, he's going out there choosing third baseman between like Maikel Franco and Brad Miller, and maybe putting Kingery in there.
And Sean Rodriguez. It's absurd. It's been bad.
Yeah, it's so. As much as I'm not a Kapler guy, I do agree that he's been dealt a bad hand this season.
Certainly has. All right, so let's roll into. We're going to rank each of the starting pitchers, each of the relief pitchers, each of the infielders and outfielders and catchers and utility players that the Phillies used this year, because it is an insane amount of players used. So I'm going to kind of shift this a little bit, and which of these pieces, outside of the very obvious ones, would we want back next year? So Joe Berardi had put out 2 pieces of over the last week. One was Joe Berardi, by the way. It's at Brosif Biscuit. He's an AMYP writer for us.
I'm genuinely curious as to where that name came from.
Who knows, man? College guys. But both really good pieces. It was 5 guys he wants off this roster come next year, and 5 guys he definitely wants on it. So I'm kind of shifting this now because of that article, because it made me think a little bit differently. In particular, one of the, spoiler alert, if you haven't read the article yet, by the way, one of the people he wants off this roster next year is Gene Segura, which is interesting to me, to say the least. But so let's kind of break it down position category by position category right now, and we'll go outside of the obvious Aaron Nola's, Bryce Harper's, JT Realmuto's, and things like that. Which of the pieces that are currently on this roster right now, or hurt, whatever it may be, do you foresee as a piece going forward? Because I don't think it's as many pieces as people think. So starting pitching, it's Aaron Nola, and then what?
Nobody.
So
Nobody currently on the roster.
So you would assume, first of all, you assume that Jake Arrieta is going to be back as your theoretical number 5 next year.
Hopefully a number 5, because if he's anything higher up than that, this team's got some serious issues.
Dude, I'm cool with Jake as a 5. Honestly,
as
that's
a 5,
fine.
yeah.
You just can't be your number 2 or 3.
Maybe as a 4.
4 or 5. I'll give you that.
2, they've got the worst rotation in baseball. If he's 3, they've got some issues.
Yeah. So, but you assume at whatever point that it's going to be Nola at 1 or 2, depending on who gets picked up. And then we'll say Jake at 4 or 5. And then we have a bunch of arms that have started games for the Phillies this year. Nick Pivetta, Jared Eichhoff, who was part of my early season predictions, very wrong about him, Vince Velasquez, and Zach Eflin. Of the 4 of them, we may only have a roster spot or a starting pitching spot in that rotation for one of them. If you got to bet on one, who are you betting on?
I'm betting on Eflin.
You think so?
I think that he hasn't pitched that well since the beginning of the season. He started off really well and then just went completely down the drain. But I think that he's got the best potential to have a decent season as a number 5 starter for them next year.
I think you're right. And I think you're right specifically because the other names mentioned are, like, Eichhoff, I think, is just done. Like, physically, I just don't think he can do it. Pivetta and Velasquez, to me, both project better as bullpen arms for right now. And if they needed to be in the rotation, I think both guys could transition back to the rotation. But I don't think that Zach Eflin and his goofy-ass body and his head can work as a bullpen pitcher. Like, he doesn't have secondary stuff good enough to be a bullpen pitcher. He relies a lot on a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. That's kind of it. Like, his curveball's not great. His changeup's not great. Like, he kind of throws a slider, but also not great. It's not good for your bullpen. The other guys have good secondary stuff. Well, Vince Velasquez also doesn't have good secondary stuff, but his fastball's got interesting life sometimes. But yeah, I think it's going to end up coming down to either Vince or Eflin. And I think if it's Vince Velasquez who gets a starting spot, I think Eflin at some point gets moved. And if it is Eflin, it would not shock me if Vince Velasquez moves to a 7th or 8th inning role. And they make that the sole focus for him. Then we have some interesting pieces, not interesting, but interesting enough pieces that have pitched for us this year in Smiley and Vargas. And we can throw Ranger Suarez in there because he's actually pitched really well out of the bullpen. And he was a starting pitcher for the longest time, throughout his minor league career here in Philly. Any of the 3 of them, maybe even, you can even throw De Los Santos in there. Any of the 4 of them project to you at any point a person in this rotation for the Phillies in 2020?
I like the idea of keeping Ranger Suarez in the bullpen. It's always key to have a good left-handed pitcher in the bullpen. He's maybe not necessarily good, but he's been effective this year. And he could be, that lefty specialist that every team has, that he could be that guy for the Phillies. So, yeah, I would certainly be on board with keeping Ranger Suarez in the bullpen. I don't want him in the rotation because when he's in the rotation, he gets hit pretty hard.
Yeah.
But he just goes out there for an inning or so, like every other night, every third night. He's done a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me in keeping him in the bullpen is bullpen pitchers are going to have to be utilized differently next year. Next year, it's the 3 batters rule, and he's a guy who has proven that he can pitch to both sides. That's something that you need, and a lot of these bullpen pitchers who are extremely effective now are going to be in for an awakening next year with that rule change, which I think goes into effect next year. I could be wrong.
You think that next year they go with one less guy on the bench and an extra arm in the bullpen?
They already do that. They
so you think that they continue doing that then?
Probably. I think that maybe not for the whole season, because eventually, like I said, theoretically, we'll have an actual rotation next year, and we won't need to be burning out bullpen arms, and we can get a more versatile bench piece back that we won't have to use an Andrew Knapp.
Well, aren't they also expanding the roster size next season?
Is it 26 all year?
I think it's 26 all year next year.
Yeah, if it's 26 all year, then yeah. But yeah, interesting stuff in the starting rotation. Final question on the starting rotation. Is there anyone that has been used in our starting rotation this year that you actually just are done with as a Philadelphia Philly and you'd like to move on from them?
Well, really, it would be Arrieta, but he's got one more year left on his contract, and nobody else is going to take him. And the Phillies would have to bite the hard one if they wanted to just up and release him. That would just be a lot of dead money right there.
Yeah.
So it would be Arrieta, but since I can't go with him, I'm going to say Pivetta. I'm done with him. I'm done with his stupid antics and his unwillingness to go to the bullpen. And the bitching and complaining when he gets sent down or when he gets removed from the rotation, it's too much for me. He's got so much talent. He's just a head case.
He is someone that you got to worry if he ever figures it out. And I think he is going to figure it out, and I think he's going to figure it out somewhere, not in Philadelphia, and we're all going to be pissed off.
He's going to figure it out down
like
in
LA.
D.C.
He's not going to figure it out in D.C.
He'll figure it out somewhere in the NL East where he pitches against us like 7 times a year.
Maybe so, but it's going to be bad, though. All right, so let's transition over into the bullpen here. We've used an absurd amount of bullpen pieces this season. Let's go with 2 people or 2 arms that you 100%, without a question, want in your bullpen next year, and then 2 arms that you'd like to never see in a Phillies uniform again, rather than going into all 30-some arms that used.
I never thought that I would say this, but I 100% want Hector Neris back next year.
Do you want him back in the closer's role still?
I'm actually fairly uncomfortably comfortable with him. You know, he did it again last night. He gave up that home run to make it a 1-run game, and then he let Acuna on base into, what did he get to third base with 1 out?
Yeah, it was first and third.
Yeah, and then he found his way out of it. But he's had a lot of those, close calls. By and large, though, he's done a good job in the closer's role this year. He's been fairly consistent, and one thing that he's done that he used to do in the past, he would blow one save and then he would get into a funk and blow a bunch in a row.
Yeah.
And he's done a good job of mitigating that this year. He'll blow a save and then he'll go back out there the next night and he'll get him 1, 2, 3. He's been better about shaking off the bad outings and coming back and being better the next time out. So I think that, as he becomes more experienced as a closer, that'll be less of a issue for him. So, yeah, I'm 100% behind theirs being the bullpen. I'm okay with him being the closer next year if they need him. That's one guy. And honestly, man, I'm having a hard time finding another guy because the Phillies bullpen's just been abysmal this year. I would say Robertson's probably not going to pitch next year, is he?
No.
No, he's not going to be back. I don't know, man. That's really tough. I'll go with one guy.
One guy. All right, well then I will shift it then. If you want to excuse 3 that you'd never see in a Phillies uniform again, you can go up to 3 then.
You know what? I'll go with one more guy. I think that Mike Morin, when he has pitched, has been fairly decent for us.
Okay.
He's not going to be a setup guy or a closer, but someone who comes in, eats up innings when they need him to. I'm cool with that.
Mike Morin. All right. Well, he is not someone that I would have on my list. Hector Neris for me is definitely 1. I think I'm going to go with a healthy Adam Morgan as the second one that I definitely want, but that think and definitely contradict each other. It's hard. The way that when he's healthy and when he was right early on in this, he literally was unhittable. And then things started to break down in his body a little bit there. He came back a little too soon, and then obviously was eventually shut down for good there. But if it isn't Adam Morgan, it would be Jose Alvarez. And for all of the poor decisions that Clentac has made, or trades that just were meh, whatever, that was a good one. Trading Luis Garcia, for him. I don't know how he did it. So one of those 2 lefties for me is probably the second. If you're going to shoot any of the current bullpen pieces to the sun, can you narrow it down to 2?
Oh my God, man. First off, Juan Nicasio.
Yeah.
I've never despised the Phillies reliever as much as I've despised Juan Nicasio. He doesn't have terrible numbers this year, but it just seems like every time that he came in a close and late situation, that lead would evaporate as quick as a snap of a finger. One in particular that I remember where I think they actually had him out there for a save situation. I don't know if Neris had been used the night before or something like that.
In St. Louis?
It was actually the Nationals early in the season where he gave up I think it was him. It might have been somebody else. It might have been Alvarez, actually. But I know that Nicasio played a role in blowing the game against the Nationals. It was a game where...
early on? Yeah. The Juan Soto walk-off? The first one?
No. It was in Philly. It was the game where, I forget, somebody hit a home run with 2 outs and 2 strikes to tie it in the 9th inning. And then I think Nicasio, I think, was the one who gave up the Soto home run, the go-ahead 3-run homer.
I think it was Alvarez and then Nicasio, or Nicasio then Alvarez. I think you're right.
Yeah, whichever way it went, Nicasio played a role in that. And, yeah, he did that on a few occasions this season. So I'm not a big fan of the guy. He's the number one guy who absolutely needs to go. And the second guy, even though when he did pitch, he pitched well, he's just been such a pain in the ass. Pat Neshek.
You could take your little brother, Jared Parker, with you, too. That guy's just a fucking nutcase on the mound.
Little brother? That guy's 6'5", 250 pounds. Coming sprinting straight out of the bullpen.
Different guy.
I'm sorry, what's that?
That's a different guy.
Oh.
Parker's the guy who sets 87 times and who literally looks exactly like Neshek.
Oh, I was thinking of Hughes.
Yeah, Hughes is nuts. Hughes is a serial killer, so if he wants to stay here, I'm not going to piss him off. I don't like him, but if he wants a job, he's got a job. But he does stink. So, not a whole hell of a lot of bullpen arms here that we would like to remain here in Philadelphia. So that's going to be a hell of a project for Klentak or whomever our front office leaders are heading into this offseason. So let's go into position players now. We don't have a whole hell of a lot of spots to really, really talk about. But let's start with the outfield. Personally, I think Hazley's played himself into a position where he should be your center fielder to start next season. I think that it should be a healthy Andrew McCutchen in left, and then Hazley in center, Harper in right. I think Quinn should be if healthy, he should be your 4th or 5th outfielder / emergency relief pitcher, apparently, out there. And then I think your 5th should be Vince Velasquez as an outfielder. Honestly,
why not?
A better hitter than Sean Rodriguez, and he's a better fielder than everyone in the outfield except for Bryce Harper.
Could be seeing Rick Ankiel 2.0.
That's what I'm saying. Look. If he wants a career, he should transition. But he's too athletic.
Really should.
He's not.
Saw him crank a home run this year.
That's what I'm saying. And if he could focus 100% on his craft being as a position player, hell yeah.
He is a really good athlete too.
He's a great athlete, and we wouldn't hate him then. That was the most love he ever received in Philadelphia outside of his 16 strikeout game against a minor league team. That was fantastic that night. But no, so for the outfield, and more specifically with Corey Dickerson, he's a guy who, as you mentioned, he's been the Phillies' best hitter since he got here. He's played 34 games and had 34 RBI, and then, in I think 20 extra base hits, something absurd. He's just been a great pure hitter for the Phillies. But he can't stay healthy. Never has in his entire career. What do you do with a guy like that when you're already faced with a Roman Quinn on the bench there? And if you're going to go with a second-year Adam Hazley out there in center, you kind of want some actual security there. Is he a guy you bring back?
At this point, I don't think he is, just because he's so injury-prone, and the fact that he's going to go out and hit the free agent market, and he's going to be looking for starting 9 money. He's a guy who wants to play, and the way that he's played for the Phillies, he certainly knows that he's going to get offers from teams that are going to have a starting spot available for him. We already have, assuming Kutch comes back healthy next year, and Hazley is what he is, we already have our starting 3 in the outfield set. So, because of that, it's a crowded outfield, and I see Dickerson being the odd guy out, which is unfortunate because he did play really well. I just think the injury issues were, they'll lead the Phillies in a direction of going with Adam Hazley as opposed to giving Dickerson time out there.
I think with as well as Hazley has played defensively, which has shocked a lot of people, myself included, and he has hit lefties when given the opportunity. He did not start off that way, but he's getting better. To me, it's the choice. It's a money saver, even though you're a big market. The one thing I will say about Dickerson is the fact that he's got a broken foot now and has been hurt 3 different times, I think, in his short stay with the Philadelphia Phillies. The guy's not getting the contract that he probably deserves based on play. specifically because he can't stay on a baseball field.
He's still going to start somewhere, though.
Maybe.
But I think he does.
If I'm the Phillies, he's an interesting piece that I still very well may entertain bringing him in here. If nothing else, to platoon with a 33-year-old coming off an ACL in left field. He and Kutch playing together out there in left that's a pretty damn good tandem. So if the three of them, Kutch, Dickerson, and Hazley are all part of the outfield tandem out there, and they all kind of rotate between left and center, I'm pretty freaking okay with that.
So that in that case, Roman Quinn is your fifth outfielder then.
That's fine. Fifth outfielder and closer. Not a big deal. Yeah, you got a cannon out there.
Yeah, Roman Quinn's also a guy who I want to keep around because once he remembered how to hit a baseball this season after his first 30 or so at bats, he actually played pretty damn well.
He hit until he got hurt again. I guess it was his August. He was really good. Or July, late July, early August. He was really good.
Didn't he hit an opposite field upper deck home run?
No, he pulled an upper deck home run.
Well, he hit an opposite field shot at one point.
He did hit an opposite field home run. I think
got a little bit of sneaky pop there.
Sometimes, yeah. He's an interesting piece. He's nothing special. But I think if he's your fifth outfielder, you got a really good.
He's nothing special, but he is somewhat of a Swiss Army knife, though. He can,
for sure,
give you the occasional pop. He can come up with big hits. He's a base stealer. He plays good defense when he's out there. And, like you said, he can pitch.
He can.
He almost got the win in that game, too.
I know. How crazy would that have been if Velasquez, makes the plays that he makes? And I'm pretty sure Velasquez came up the bottom half of the next inning.
That would have been nuts if you get a walk-off home run from a pitcher and the win on the mound by a position player.
Would have been awesome. All right, so let's shift over to the infield now. And I left one name out of the outfield mix specifically because he's going to be playing in the infield next year. I'm pretty certain. So obviously Franco, we assume his days are done in Philadelphia. Gene Segura is the one that we're going to talk about just because of Joe Berardi's article for us. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Cesar Hernandez, we think, possibly gone. Scotty Kingery is the one that is going to be there, and Rhys Hoskins is obviously going to be at first base. So, of the infielders that we have there, the starting caliber infielders, anyone that you see no longer with this team for any reason whatsoever?
I'm going to go with what you said, Cesar. I think that Scotty's going to be our new second baseman next year. I think Cesar's going to be on the move. Hopefully they can deal him and bring in a third baseman, which will solidify the infield a little bit more so that there's not as much shuffling guys around. I think that's one way that they could go there. If they don't do that, then they're probably just going to have to make Kingery the full-time starting third baseman, which I don't want them to do.
Neither do I. Not particularly. So let me ask you this. If they move on from Cesar, Scotty Kingery actually played a much better shortstop than he started out playing last year. He learned that position well. He adapted to it okay. He's no better or worse, in my opinion, defensively than what Gene Segura is out there. One of Joe's main driving factors, and I talked to him about it after he submitted the article, is the fact that his defense is not great there at shortstop, Gene Segura. Gene Segura is always projected more as a second baseman, in my opinion. His body, his makeup, everything about him. He came up as a second baseman. Would you shift Gene Segura to second base and let Scotty Kingery play shortstop? Or would you rather just keep riding out Segura knowing that Bryson Stott is probably not too far away and another quick rise guy in the system?
I would lean towards just riding out Segura until Stott is up. Because, yeah, like you said, he's probably not that far off. And I don't see Segura, he's played well this season. He's a talented hitter. I don't see him being the long-term solution at shortstop.
Yeah, he's not.
So, no, I'd stick with him for the time being until Bryson Stott is ready, because you don't want to get Kingery playing one position and then switch him back again for the millionth time in his career. You want to find Kingery a spot where he can settle in and find a career there.
I don't know, man. We keep hearing the Zobrist comparisons often, and if Joe Maddon's a potential candidate for a managerial spot at some point in the next couple of years, you have to assume that the Phillies may entertain that, and he's a guy who has forever used Ben Zobrist in that particular role, and it's made a hell of a career out of it for him. Scott Kingery is a guy who and in just his second year of Major League Baseball, has really, really impressed, and he's done it playing all over the diamond. So I don't know that it's as important as we once thought it was for him to lock down to one position, and I especially don't think it's quite as important because if, for argument's sake, Luis Garcia down in the minors has a bounce back year next year in the minor leagues, he was our most exciting defensive or our most exciting infield prospect outside of Alec Boehm. Maybe he's a future second baseman, despite the fact that he also projects as a shortstop like Stott does. Maybe Stott goes to second base. Maybe Scotty plays everywhere. We don't know. There's a lot to figure out. I do know that I would love to eventually see Scott Kingery play more games than not at second base, his natural position. But regardless, I'm pretty okay with it so long as he's in the starting lineup. 150 plus games a night. So catcher is set, obviously, with JT Realmuto, who's going to catch probably 140, 145 games a year. Andrew Knapp's been the punching bag of everyone, this podcast included, unless we have Ty Daubert on it, in which case he's a Knapp apologist.
The biggest Andrew Knapp fan.
He is hilarious.
And probably the only Andrew Knapp fan.
He very well may be. Ty, we love you, man. We got to get you back on show at some point. We also never got to a Phillies game together this year, which is disappointing. I also never met you up in Reading since he covers for the Reading Fightins.
I also feel bad because I went on the podcast account the other day and I gave shout-outs to all our personals and I forgot to put his in there.
Well, he's not for us. He works for the Painted Lines.
He is, but he's been on our show a few times and he's in our WhatsApp chat, so...
That's true. He's in it because I love the kid. He's so smart. He's so good to talk Phillies baseball with. So yeah, little inner segment thing to thank Ty for being Ty. We appreciate you, guy. But Andrew Knapp, I'm actually fine if Andrew Knapp is here next year, given you reminding me that there's going to be a 26th player. The biggest shot against Andrew Knapp is the fact that he's needed to be a pinch hitter because we have a short bench. Theoretically, we won't need to have a short bench next year, so I'm pretty okay with the way that he handles the pitching staff. He calls a really nice game, so I'm not overly concerned about Andrew Knapp by any stretch. But for you, are you shooting him to the sun?
No, not necessarily, even though most of the time I want to, just because I realize that there's not a huge market for backup catchers.
Yeah.
It's
especially when you're starting catchers, JT Realmuto.
Yeah, JT's gonna play way too many games next year again, but I'm fine with Knapp as a backup. It's gonna be he'll start like 20, 30 games.
Maybe
that. Probably
maybe
not.
What would you pay JT this offseason, by the way?
That's tough. What's his current contract?
I don't know what his current contract is. All the projections right now are either 4 or 5 years for anywhere from 100 to 125 million.
Oh yeah, I'd pay him. What does that equate to? About 25 million
20
a year?
to 25 a year.
Yeah, I would pay him that.
Yeah, me too.
It's a little bit less than what Bryce is making, but a guy who arguably is only a little bit less valuable than Bryce.
Yep.
So yeah, it's about right.
Yeah, I agree. I'd pay him whatever the hell it took to get him to stay here. Both from an offensive and obviously defense. He's literally one of the most valuable players in all of baseball.
He really is.
So whatever it takes. So now the fun one, bench pieces. Is there any bench player that you could see coming back and having an impact role for the Philadelphia Phillies outside of the already mentioned Roman Quinn?
Maybe Brad Miller as a utility infielder. He doesn't do anything really great, but he's a serviceable guy. He can come in off the bench and give you the occasional home run or the occasional clutch base hit. He's not going to be. He'll never be a starting caliber player. Even though I think one year he did hit 30 home runs playing down in Tampa.
Yeah.
He's a serviceable guy off the bench. I don't like what he brings, especially playing third base defensively. Pretty terrible, but second base, he's serviceable there. He's about as like an average bench piece that you're going to find out there. So I'm cool with him being back.
I guess if you're going to take any bench piece, that's probably the guy. Knowing that we've already selected Quinn as someone to be there, and then Andrew Knapp theoretically as your backup catcher.
Man bun needs to be shot off to the moon.
He's not great.
Like that guy.
All right.
He needs to be shot off somewhere where he's not going to be booed.
Well, if he talks the way he did here, I can't imagine he's going to land in too many destinations where he isn't going to be booed. But before we get into some of our season-ending awards here, and then a review of some of our early season and preseason predictions for this
Pretty
club.
hilarious, by the way. All way, way, way off.
Yeah, not great. Quick word from our sponsor over at Just Food. It's Just Food, 215-794-FOOD, 215-794-3663. Treat yourself. Take it home. Use them for all of your catering needs, whether you're doing a house party, whether you have a wedding, whether you have an office party, whatever it may be. Just Food has a menu for you. Visit our guy over there, Asian Rob. Again, it's Just Food, 215-794-FOOD. That's 215-794-3663. You can also go on their website. It's jfcatering.com. Let them know that Shane or Rob from AMYP sent you, and they'll hook you guys up. So, season-ending awards for the Philadelphia Phillies. This is something, but we're going to do it. And we're doing season-ending awards because despite the fact that we are 4 games out, I still don't care. I don't believe in that 0.7% chance, and they're not going to get me to jump on board again, even if they sweep the freaking Braves. They're out of contention. They're officially eliminated in terms of the AMYP standards. So, MVP for the Philadelphia Phillies this season. Who are you going with?
Team MVP, Bryce Harper.
You're going Bryce Harper?
I'm going Bryce. He had a slump earlier in the season, but ever since then, he's been the most consistent player. He's done exactly what we wanted him to do power-wise, drawing walks, driving runs in. He hasn't outperformed expectations, but he also, ever since he came out of that slump, hasn't underperformed expectations either. And he's been the most valuable piece in the lineup.
Since you went Bryce, I'm going to go JT. We just mentioned it, one of the most valuable players in the entire sport. What he brings to a pitching staff that's constantly changing, what he brings to the defensive element of obviously throwing guys out and keeping runners honest. I mean, holy shit, that guy's crazy good. And obviously what he's done with the bat in the second half. It took him a little bit, but he came on, and that's really encouraging for what we're going to see for the next, hopefully 4 to 5 years of JT. So that for me is definitely the guy. Second one is comeback or bounce back player of the year for the Philadelphia Phillies.
Kingery. I feel like you were probably going to go with the same one, right?
Yeah, I was, but keep talking. I'll
had a really rough rookie season, as I've called it before, a baptism by fire. Really came out strong this season. Average has dipped a little bit. He was at one point hitting like 350. But as expected, as the season goes along, the average is going to dip a little bit. I think it's down to the 270s right now, 260s.
High 250s, I think.
Is it? Okay, well, it's dipped a little bit more than I thought, but still, he's played really well. He's come up with a number of big hits. He's shown some power in there. He's probably going to hit 20 homers by the time the season's over. Been solid defensively wherever they've needed him, although he's not an ideal third baseman. He played a good center field when he's out there. He's played a good short and a good second when he's been there. Really shown the growth that I think all the Phillies fans were looking for him, looking to get out of him this season, and he's only going to get better.
Well, I tried to think of a different one, and I got nothing. So, for me too, really impressive what we saw from Scott Kingery after a pretty tough and trying, thrust into a new role and an interesting role last year in his rookie year in the majors. Really impressive what he was able to do both offensively and defensively. So good for Scott. You are the bounce back player of the year after probably the first trying year of your career as a professional baseball player.
Wasn't he statistically the worst player in baseball?
So he was statistically one of the worst hitters in baseball.
Yeah, that's that's what I meant.
Yeah, in terms of overall value, I can't imagine he was up very high. So probably also not great.
Complete turnaround this season. And
really,
one thing
really
that
great.
I've liked that I've seen from him is the opposite field power.
Yeah, using the whole field. And look, you mentioned it over the last couple shows that it's not necessarily the proven power guys who are benefiting most from these juice baseballs, but rather the line drive hitters, like the pure contact guys that are just using that extra little bit of tight-laced ball to kind of line drive, just punch these things out to wherever they're pitched. And we saw a few out in Cincinnati for him. He's utilizing the entire field there, and he's just got such a smooth swing when it's right. So Definitely a really impressive year from Scott Kingery. May be a candidate in this category as well, but best hair. So we judge hair all the time on all of our podcasts for no reason. Best hair of the Philadelphia Phillies.
It's between Bryce and Scotty.
Yep.
I can't really make a decision there. I guess I'll go Kingery. But it's a toss-up. You could go either way. Yeah,
I think that the fact that their little handshake thing that they have is literally the two of them acknowledging their great flow. I think that it's a joint award there. I think they should both hold that trophy up at the end of the year because they both have fantastic hair.
Yeah, why not?
Most iconic single moment of the season.
Well, at the beginning of the season, if the season had gone as planned, then I would have said that the iconic moment would have been Reese's grand slam on opening day. It would have set the tone for the whole season, and for a while it did, but that didn't come to fruition, really.
Yeah.
So, for me, the iconic moment is Bryce's walk-off grand slam.
Yeah. I think for everyone, it's probably that. I am going to go with taking 2 out of 4 from the Dodgers, and one of which was a Bryce walk-off win as well. At that point, we were still... Look, I think it was, late July, early August for that?
I think it was earlier than that. It might have been...
Early July?
Early July, sometime around there.
All right, so... it was a really important series. It was a 4-game series, and to be able to take to split that with the best team in baseball was really impressive. And I think that the way that Bryce was able to walk that off with that walk-off double there, for me, that was the game that should have begun a turnaround for this team. It just never clicked. But for me, I remember listening to it, and Fransky's call on the radio was fantastic. I was listening during my baseball game that night because that's how I roll in fake baseball. Listening out there with iPod headphones in. But, so 2 Bryce Harper moments here. Best win, I'm going to double up on mine and say that was the best win of the season.
Dodgers.
Yeah. You going to double up on yours?
Yeah, I'm going to double up on mine as well. I don't think it was the game that swept the Cubs, or was it?
Second game.
It was one of those, but either way, yeah, being a part of that series where they swept the Cubs and gave us, at the time, great playoff hopes because we were fighting with the Cubs for that second wild card spot. Bryce hitting that walk-off grand slam after being down 5-0. I think 5-0 or 6-1. It was 5-0.
I was recording Whiskey Ramble with Steve, and we had both given up on the game. And then the second we went off air was when Bryce hit that home run, and I got the alert.
Yeah, it was 5-0, and they came back. I think they scored 1 run in the bottom of the 8th inning, and then they scored 2 more in the bottom of the 9th before Bryce came up, and Bryce hits a walk-off grand slam.
Yeah.
That was the marquee win for them that season because at that point they were still in the thick of things. They were still fighting for the second wild card spot, and again, it was against the team that they were fighting with. And they went out there and they swept the Cubs, and unfortunately, the 2 teams went in opposite directions after that. The Phillies went down, the Cubs went back up. The Phillies couldn't hold their momentum.
Story of the year.
Yeah, but huge win for them at that point.
Agreed. Last category we'll do in this show is the team's Cy Young. So I'm interested to see where you go with this direction if you just take Aaron.
Yeah, it's got to be Aaron. I mean, who else? They have no rotation beyond him.
Jose Alvarez?
Nah.
Hector Neris?
I don't go with bullpen guys for
a team award, though.
For a team award, still, you got to go with the most proven starting pitcher out there, even though he hasn't pitched well his last few times out. He was shaky to start the season. He was excellent from about the middle of May through the beginning of this month.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got to be Nola.
I'm going to take one of those 2 bullpen pieces. Don't really know which one. I think you could just throw a dart at either of them. They've both been incredibly, incredibly important to this team. So probably Hector. I think I'm going to go with Hector there, a guy who probably should have made the All-Star team earlier on in the year. But in our last few minutes here on this pod, we're going to review, just for shits and giggles, some of our very poor preseason predictions here. So my first 2 that we're going to go over and just laugh at for a quick moment is LJ. Did he believe that Franco was going to lead the Phillies in home runs or be second in the Phillies in home runs?
I think he said second.
Second in the Phillies in home runs? All right. Franco's garbage. He always has been.
It was looking great for the first month.
It was looking great for the first month, and he had to walk around here with his chest all pumped and stuff. And I'm like, you've watched 3 baseball games in 30 years, man. Chill. But very incorrect on Franco. And then his other was that Arrieta was going to have at least 18 wins. So,
oh man,
he just likes to go against the grain with everything. He is our ESP. Like, he is the guy that people love to hate. It's brilliant.
And he had 2 terrible Phillies takes.
3. So we thought. He had the win total at 84 to 88. So
which is actually pretty realistic.
He is going to be closer than all of us.
Yeah.
So that's a damn shame.
So he's 1 for 3.
Yes. The other one he had was that Harper was going to lead the league in strikeouts and top out at like 24, 25 home runs. So Harper did strike out a lot and has struck out a lot, but he obviously has eclipsed the 25 home run mark. So I think he said it wouldn't surprise him if Harper hit like 240 to 250, which, again, Harper's at like 255, 260 right now. So
in that ballpark.
But those are
a terrible prediction, but
no,
a little bit off.
To put this in perspective, by the way, the absurdity of all of LJ's takes and predictions those are the ones we remember. Like, I sat here trying to remember my own, and I couldn't. I sat here trying to remember Rob's, and like I couldn't. I had to sit here and just think before I finally went back onto the old archives, find the episodes, and just scan through for different takes.
Believe it or not, I think I did also have a high win total projection for Arrieta. I think L had 18, I had like 16 or something like that.
No, you had that someone in the Phillies would throw a no-hitter.
I did have that as well, but I think I also said something about Arrieta.
Maybe.
I do remember specifically I criticized L for having his high win total projection, and then I went out and I projected like 2 wins less.
That sounds actually familiar. So my prediction of 7 players or more would hit 20 home runs for the Phillies, or would be on the roster and have 20 home runs.
Not that far off from it.
So Kingery's going to get there. So Kingery, Bryce, Reese, JT, Bruce.
You're going to include Bruce, even though he only hit like half of them with the Phillies.
Mm-hmm. Who else? I guess that's it. Franco hit, 16?
If he gets hot and he has a nice end of the season, he might reach it.
He could, maybe. But regardless, Segura did not do it. I thought he would. And Andrew McCutchen, obviously, we think would have. And Odubel, I think, would have had he played an entire season. Either of those played an entire season. So that went very wrong very quick. I also said that Jared Eichhoff would become the number 2. Boy, was I feeling hot after Jared Eichhoff's first 3 starts, and damn, did that get bad. I started. It was my fault. I went to go see him pitch against the Brewers, and Woodruff murdered us as he always does, and Jared Eichhoff had a awful game. And then he just never became a pitcher again after that, ever again. So you can blame it on me, Philadelphia. We would have had a number 2 starter throwing 88-mile-an-hour fastballs. I said that Odubel would be a dark horse MVP candidate, so I didn't realize that the MVP was for beating people.
You're not looking good with these projections.
Super insensitive, but screw that guy. And then I said that Andrew McCutchen was going to mirror the totals of Raul Ibanez first half in 2009, but he was going to do it through the duration of his season.
He was.
He was not quite the power numbers, but the average was up and the defense was significantly better. So, like, when you factor all those things in, he was arguably the most important Philadelphia Philly while he was on the field. So I'm not totally prepared to say that one was incorrect, but whatever. You said that Nola was going to win the Cy Young, and you said they were going to win 95 games.
95 is a little bit off. If the Cy Young was awarded just between the months of May and September, then Nola's definitely in the conversation there. But unfortunately, the months of April and September also count towards it, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it was a tough year for AMYP predictions. We bought into the hype, and maybe we shouldn't have. Should have taken a look more.
We bought way into the hype.
We all did. Yeah, we all did.
But you mentioned the projection that somebody on the Phillies is going to throw a no-hitter this year, and I just like to point out that we still have, 2 weeks, 3 weeks left for that to happen.
Who the hell is going to throw a no-hitter for this baseball team?
I don't know. We've seen stranger things happen.
It's going to be Drew Smiley.
We saw the freaking Mariners throw a combined no-hitter this year.
Hey, the Mariners for the first 15 games of baseball are unbelievable, and then they became literally one of the worst teams. I didn't even know it was possible, but hilarious nevertheless. Actually, the Mets did that last year. The Mets were on fire for the first 13 games, whatever it was. I think they were like 12-1.
Something like that, yeah.
So, you have any final thoughts here for In Kap We Trust? Amazingly, we went over an hour in this one.
Yeah, a lot of frustrations to get through with the Phillies because, as you said, they're eliminated.
They are eliminated. That 0.7% chance is bullshit. I refuse anymore.
So you're saying there's a chance?
I refuse anymore to sit here and buy into the hype and go full all in every single time that they win a game that we didn't expect them to win.
Yeah, that 0.7 you can round it to 0 because I'm not buying in either.
There you go. So officially
Phillies
eliminated by
Phillies baseball is officially over. Flyers preseason hockey is more important than the remaining Phillies games.
Agreed. Can't wait to talk on Disciples of Ed again, so have me on as a guest at some point.
Will do.
Appreciate you. All right, so before we send it off, I'd like to remind you again, rate and review the pod. It does make us quite happy. It validates all of our life decisions that we don't spend all this time talking into a mic for only the microphone to hear it. So it is Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spreaker, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube. You can go on to. We've had a couple comments there. By the way, when you do comment on YouTube, it takes me a minute to realize because I keep forgetting we have one. I do find them, and I do understand that you guys want us to swear less. So hopefully you have, at least on my behalf, noticed that I'm attempting. But wherever you comment, we take it into consideration. There we go, words. And then you can always also email us those things in as well. And that is anypodcastteam@gmail.com. And then, what am I forgetting? Twitter handles. I didn't do that in the last show. At ANY Podcast. You can also follow Rob. It's at radio_Rob. You can follow me, the host of In Kap We Trust, at Shane_Mead. Am I forgetting anything?
No, I think that's about it. But if you're looking for an episode that is sans swearing, unfortunately, I dropped about 15 F-bombs in the last episode of Backyard Beers and Football. And if you're into hockey, well then, Disciples of Ed, it's Steve and I and occasionally Shane, so there's going to be swearing in that.
There's going to be some swearing. We are trying to mask it a little, but we promise nothing. It's part of our identity here. But that'll be it. We're going to turn this one over to the Jackdolls, another band that you should 100% support. They bring us in and take us out of every show. Go to jackdolls.com or follow them on Facebook. It's the Jackdolls. It's a cool little crow that you got going on there. At least I think it's a crow, whatever the hell it is. But fantastic music. Be sure to support their music by, I can't remember if they actually have CDs anymore. I think they still have CDs. If not, just go into iTunes, search the Jackdolls, purchase something up, and if you want to go see them live, which you totally should, they're playing the New York Renaissance Fair this week and for the next 3 weeks on weekends, so definitely go give them a listen. They are pretty fantastic, and the Renaissance Fair is a great time. So that's going to be it for In Kap We Trust here. For Rob, I am Shane. We will see you guys next week when they are officially eliminated by the standards of Major League Baseball.
Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still happy life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.